Ladies and gentlemen, Pikmin 4 is upon us. Today we'll be discussing the recent Pikmin 4 demo. Joining me is fellow Pikmin enjoyer and small-time YouTuber, Jam. I don't know about you, but my brain can't process the fact that this is the Pikmin 4, the one that we've been waiting 11 years for.
I know, yeah. This game really has some huge expectations to fill. I mean, it's the Pikmin 4, right?
Right, after the Pikmin 3, and the Pikmin 2,
Yes.
and
In a
the
series like
one.
this, we only get an entry every, I don't know, decade, right?
Yeah, we're lucky to get one every decade.
Yeah, exactly. So having a new numbered entry in the Pikmin series it's a huge deal, right?
Yes, it is. What are your thoughts on the Pikmin 4 demo?
Okay, well, I am disappointed. As a longtime Pikmin fan, I find the demo to be quite boring, very much lacking in what makes Pikmin good, and very patronizing, too.
No way! I can't believe this!
I know, I thought this was supposed to be the Pikmin 4. That would be the answer to all our problems. Well, there's a lot of things about the demo so far that make me really worried about how the full game is going to be, especially, and make me just, disappointed that it's ended up this way, right?
Yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about, and that is the fact that demos today aren't what they used to be.
Right.
Even just 5 years ago. So whenever you would get a demo, the whole point is it's supposed to be this really nice vertical slice of the game
Mm-hmm.
that gives you some idea of all the parts of it. But nowadays, what they do is they just give you the first hour or two of the game, or more. Some
Yeah.
demos get pretty long. And what they do is they make you play through the most boring part of the game.
Yeah. No kidding.
And then they say you can't continue until you buy the full game. And even worse is in the case of Pikmin 4, they literally hold your save data hostage until you buy the full game. Yeah, if you collect 1500, you know, sparklium of worth of treasure, the demo just ends.
Yeah, I got stuck at the landing site the next day because you can't even go back in time after you reach the limit. So that was pretty frustrating. I had to play through the demo a second time in order to actually see all the content in it, which means sitting through all of the cutscenes all over again.
Mm. And it's bad too because it disincentivizes you to play the game how it's meant to be played, right? Where you
True.
get
Yeah.
all the stuff.
Yeah.
You're actively avoiding treasure just so you can play the game.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't bother me that much. I mean, it's just a demo, but still. I think this tactic is a little bit underhanded.
Right. Speaking of the cutscenes, I think that's actually all the interruptions in the demo is actually the most unbearable part of it.
Yes, by far.
Yes. Even after all the exposition is out of the way, you still get interrupted like every time anything happens, really.
Yes.
It's a lot of stuff that you get interrupted for that you can figure out on your own. I feel like it's not necessary for those interruptions to happen. The frequency of the interruptions is honestly astounding. Pikmin has always sort of struggled from this problem. Think back to like Pikmin 1 or
That's the
Pikmin
worst
2.
part of Pikmin 1 is the tutorial day.
Yeah, exactly. But at least those games get out of the way once they get out of the way, right?
Right.
I just felt like the whole demo, even up till the very last cave, Colin was still checking in to interrupt and tell me something I didn't need him to tell me,
Maybe it does let up eventually, but I'm not convinced.
Yeah, it most likely does in the mid and late game, probably. But again, the demo is supposed to be something that, like you said, shows you what the game's like. And right now, I'm saying that the game is just, a slog.
Yeah. I want to go through and count in my hour and a half of playing the game how many cutscenes or interruptions there are. Because they're not all cutscenes, sometimes they're text boxes or the app loading thing, which games need to quit doing that. Like, nobody likes loading times.
Yeah. The thing is that it's a loading time that's just for like aesthetic purposes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they actually have to take all that time to load it onto your tablet or whatever, It's just more and more downtime that it's not respectful of my time as a player.
No, it really isn't. So that aside, why don't we talk a little bit about the actual Pikmin 4 gameplay? Like when you're not mashing the start button what the game is like to play.
Yes.
So what were your impressions going in? Just anything.
I mean, it's obviously like Pikmin gameplay, right? Of course, you've got Pikmin. Pikmin are carrying things, you're throwing them, there's Bulborbs, all that good stuff, right? But it's really just lacking something that the first couple entries in the series really nailed, right? Like what made them so good, especially to revisit, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of features that they included that make the game really safe and, a whole lot easier. Pretty
Mm-hmm.
much designed to where it's harder for you to make a mistake or have a bad time.
Yes.
And a lot of those inclusions ended up being really frustrating for me because they were taking a lot of control out of my hands and sort of just doing it for me, right?
Yes. Yeah. You're getting onto my point here. When I was playing the demo, what I thought was the developers basically looked at Pikmin and they saw that it had RTS roots. It's a complicated game.
Mm-hmm.
It's far more complicated than just Mario. You're not just controlling one character. You're managing a bunch of them. And so it's naturally going to be a more complicated game. But they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to sell it like it's a more complicated game. They want to dumb it down so that it's more accessible. And so
Right,
what
right.
Nintendo decided to do is they decided to take bubble wrap and bubble wrap the entire game so that nobody,
Yeah,
so it's completely idiot proof.
true. Yes.
So the controls themselves have been idiot proofed to an astounding degree to reduce the mistakes that you can make,
Right.
which gives you, of course, less control over the game that you're playing.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the main ways this happens, and I think this was probably the biggest thing for you as well, was the overcarry prevention, is what I was calling it here.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
A very important part of Pikmin, of course, is putting more Pikmin than the required amount so that they carry it back faster. That's a huge part of the nuance in the routing of Pikmin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, in Pikmin 4, I can mash the button all I want. It will only let me throw the exact amount of Pikmin that I need, and then it makes you wait a little bit, and then you can throw more on there.
Even if you dismiss all your Pikmin near an object, only the required amount will grab it. Because
Yes.
why would you ever need more Pikmin than are required to carry it back, right? Why would you ever want to do that?
If you threw an extra one on there, it's just a mistake that you made, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Not something you could have done on purpose.
might as well make it impossible to make that mistake.
Yes. Or at least much more inconvenient and frustrating.
So yeah, what this does is it really makes it a lot harder to play Pikmin the way we're used to, where we can sort of strategize like, well, I don't need these Pikmin here, so they can all go on to this part and carry it back faster, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you see this in other areas too, like the whistle. I think it worked like this in Pikmin 3. Now for any task that a Pikmin is doing, you must whistle them twice to get them off of it.
Yes. Yes. I was thinking about that, and I think it comes from the fact that they made the whistle range a lot bigger in Pikmin 3 Deluxe specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and in Pikmin 4 as well, which actually means it's harder to make the whistle as small as you want it to be, right? In the old games, the whistle could be as small as the cursor could be, but now it's at least 4 or 5 times bigger than the cursor, even if you just tap the button, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that means you end up whistling a whole bunch of Pikmin by mistake. So, of course, to fix this, you have to whistle Pikmin twice now while they're doing something to make sure that you got the ones that you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's a really terrible solution because they're just compensating for the problem that they created by making the game, easier. I feel like the situations where you need to have a more precise whistle, there's a lot more of those than when you need your whistle to be at the absolutely maximum range, right?
Exactly. And another thing it's doing is it makes it harder on people who can't tap the button fast enough because you
Mm-hmm.
need a really short button press to get that tiniest whistle size.
Exactly.
And now you have to do that twice. But, you could also whistle in two different places to kind of get only the Pikmin in the overlapping area, like a Venn diagram, kind of.
Oh, yeah, yeah, true.
But I think of that as being a lot more advanced than what Nintendo wants you to do.
Yeah. It's cool that it could be more advanced, but this is such a roundabout way to have the exact same effect as the regular whistle used to be, right? It never got in the way of your decision making in the older games.
One thing that bothers me a lot is the fact that dismissing is hidden inside the menu. So now the game's a lot more about selecting the type of Pikmin you want and using only the swap Pikmin button to swap type. And that's how you do all your management.
Mhm.
In Pikmin 1, the original version, you can't do that, so you have to go through and grab the one you want. So you're always dismissing them so that you can get the types separated and all that.
Yes.
But you also use dismissing a lot because it gets all your Pikmin onto an object or to attack an enemy or onto a wall. There's a bunch of uses for dismissing that are not just making all the Pikmin sit still.
Right. Oh, and another nitpick about dismissing specifically in this is that this came in Pikmin 3 as well, but there's this animation where you lose all your momentum as the captain and you do this little spin while you dismiss, and it just makes the process even more lethargic because, well, it used to be you could just dismiss immediately at any time and with no lag on that or anything, right? Now you have to spend a whole lot of extra time unable to move while you are dismissing, right? And that's frustrating to me personally. Especially since you have to dismiss twice actually to dismiss all your Pikmin. Because dismissing once from the menu, it actually keeps the Pikmin type you have selected.
Yeah, you have to open the menu twice. You can remap dismiss to the D-pad, and there is a dismiss all button as well. But, if you're gonna hide something in the options menu like that, that solves a problem that your game has, I don't
Right.
know, maybe.
Yeah. And it's not on by default, right?
Exactly.
So that's even stranger of a decision in my opinion.
So we talked about the controls, we talked about the cutscenes. Why don't we talk about the general game design, level design, all that good stuff? The first order of business is we've got to talk about the new Pikmin type. So what are your thoughts on Ice Pikmin?
I think that Ice Pikmin have been the first time of me playing a new Pikmin game where I was not excited to have this new Pikmin type.
Because it can't fly.
Yeah.
Wing Pikmin
But
ruin all the other types.
sure, yeah. But the game had been pretty bland and cut and dry so far, and I was really hoping that Ice Pikmin would give it that extra boost. And they are pretty interesting in some aspects. You know, they can freeze enemies. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. But the excitement was just kind of stamped out as soon as I got them and those hydro jellies had appeared, right? And it became really clear to me that this was just another key that I had picked up to unlock another lock, if that makes sense, right? The ice pigment were just another thing I needed for this one specific obstacle and not for any exciting gameplay ramifications they might have. You know what I mean?
Yes. It's very, very much lock and key type game design where everything
Yes.
opens exactly one lock. So, of course, Ice Pikmin have their locks, which are the hydro jellies, and bodies of water also.
The reason I think that's pretty boring is that once you have all the keys, it's really just a situation of swap to the right Pikmin type when you see the right colored obstacle.
It's Simon Says.
Yeah, Simon Says. Exactly. Even Ochi's new rush ability.
Right, yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Ochi is
it's
also guilty of this. His charge, so basically the way it works is you charge it up, and when you release it, he runs forward, and then he skids to a stop. And then there's this long cooldown you have to wait through before you can do it again. So it's like 3 timers that are punishing you for using this move.
exactly. See, I was excited at first because I thought I was going to be able to use that as like a cool movement option, to get around the map faster, right? But it just so heavily discouraged me from using it for anything other than breaking those pots, right? Or, dealing with enemies too. It just didn't want me to use it for anything other than what they wanted me to use it for, right?
Right. Only exactly when it's necessary are you supposed to use the new game mechanics.
Yeah.
And I think also another problem I had with the rush is that when you ride on Oshi with all the Pikmin and you rush something, you charge at an enemy, you hit them, all the Pikmin fly off and land on the enemy. That doesn't happen when you charge at an item or at a treasure.
Right, I see.
The Pikmin don't fly off and grab onto the treasure. So when I first tried that, I was a little disappointed because it's another one of those things where it's like I wasn't supposed to use the rush for that, so it didn't
So
work.
you're not allowed to. I see.
Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the writing. I think it also lessens the importance of managing your squad of Pikmin because you don't have to worry about getting them out of danger, which is good because you don't have control over them anymore like you did in the old games.
Yeah.
So you just hop on Ochi and ride around and you can easily avoid enemy attacks that way. So
Yes.
it'll be interesting to see how late game boss fights are with that. One thing we forgot to mention earlier actually is the lock-on.
Oh, yes, true.
So Pikmin 3 and Pikmin 3 Deluxe, because 3 Deluxe did change how the lock-on worked a little bit, but both of them had what I would call a hard lock-on system where you have to do a specific action to lock onto that enemy.
Right.
But Pikmin 4 adds on top of that a new soft lock that happens before the hard lock. So it will automatically target nearby enemies, and then you hold down the target button to focus on that one.
Right.
So it's a little bit convoluted, but what it ends up doing is it takes all the skill out of aiming.
Yes, exactly. I think that was one of the most frustrating parts for me, and also what made it so unengaging to play this game, because all of the aiming, all of the skill that is required for aiming properly, it's completely gone now, right? You just automatically lock to the center of the dwarf board, for example, and you can always get the quick kill because you're locked on for free. And you can't not lock on to an enemy, right? The
Yeah.
cursor automatically locks on to where they think you want to throw a Pikmin, right? But oftentimes I find myself getting really frustrated because I'm trying to throw my Pikmin in a spot that the game just won't let me because it's trying to lock onto other things, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
In my replay, there was one part where, I mean, I was clearly doing things you weren't supposed to do, but at the same time, the Pikmin were all targeting the wrong thing, and it caused them all to kind of break and jump in the water.
Oh, I see.
Not a pleasant experience.
No, yeah,
So
yeah,
it really shows that the system they created isn't robust enough to hold up to complex situations like that.
definitely.
Whereas in Pikmin 1, where there's no lock-on, I would have been able to make that work in a way that you can't in this game. I do also want to talk about a few things that I felt were just laziness on the developers' part. And not to say that they were lazy in the fact that making games is hard, and obviously this is no trivial thing by any means.
Yeah, yeah. And they probably don't have the biggest budget to ever exist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is Pikmin.
Yeah. Compared to Pikmin 1 and 2 and the quality, and 3 also, that should be mentioned, 3 is also quality.
Definitely.
So in Pikmin 1, 2, and 3, the amount of care put into the games was on another level than Pikmin 4. So a few things that kind of show off this is the Dandori battles, the challenge modes from Pikmin 2 and 1, 2, and 3, which are a staple of the series, have now gone, they've graduated from being side modes to now they are the full game.
Yes. Isn't that great?
To me, I mean, it really does feel like filler content. In Pikmin 2, I could just go play the side modes when I want to, and then play the main game and get two different things out of it. But now, playing the main game, I'm just playing the challenge mode, which was meant to be optional content in the other games, and now it's not. So that
Yes.
feels like they ran out of ideas and they needed to sort of pad out the
Right.
game and make it a little bigger.
But yeah, one thing about that I thought was strange is that there's that time trial, Dandori time trial thing in the demo. It's weird how they had this specific section of the game has a really strict time limit, right? It used to be that Pikmin was about the time limit, right? You were constantly under pressure, right? But
Right.
it just seems weird that in Pikmin 4 in general, they sort of made it a lot more lax, you know? That's not really a core value of this game anymore, being under that kind of stress. Just random to me that they brought back a time limit in that specific challenge. I don't know.
Yeah, I could definitely see that because time limits really make your decisions feel like they matter. And
Yes.
so if there's all of a sudden a time limit and also a ranking that's happening at the same time,
Yes.
you're
Right.
trying to get a platinum medal in this amount of time, it's sort of
Yes.
jarring to go from the game where you can just sort of do whatever with no consequence.
Especially since it's in the same mode. I mean, like, if I wanted that kind of gameplay, playing Pikmin 4 with no stress, right, then I can do that. And if I want to play like a side mission mode where I want to be a little more optimized and everything to get a high score, then I can do exactly that, right? It's
Right.
just weird that as a Pikmin 4 player, you have to do both of those at once, right? Pikmin 3 had this figured out. The story mode is a lot different and a lot easier than the mission mode, but the mission modes provide such a unique and different kind of short form challenge, you know?
Another problem with the Dandori modes is that when you fight Olimar, which we all know he's Olimar, when you fight him in the Dandori battle, it's split screen, even though it's single player. So you
Yeah.
can see what he's doing the whole time. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's because they want you to be able to see him so that you know where he is, because in real life you would just screen cheat, you know?
True.
But at the same time, like, really? Does it need to be split screen? It's single player. That to me feels like they already had the battle mode ready, and they're just like, let's just slap the battle mode on there.
Yeah. I mean, the map on that specific battle was small enough anyway. If you had the full screen, you could probably see him at any time, regardless.
Yes.
So, I don't know. It's just a strange decision.
Yeah.
Just weird.
So, and then we get to a few other things, like, for example, the fact that treasure is fuel somehow. Explain that one to me.
Yeah. I think that was actually from Hey Pikmin, I think, right?
Of course.
And I mean, that game was a spin-off anyway. It can make as little sense as it wants. But like, I mean, this is, Pikmin 4, right?
The mainline
just-
Pikmin games have always made a lot of sense.
Yes.
In one way or another, they have this consistency to them. So to just take treasure and suddenly it's fuel, but you still have the treasure, right? It just like emits this fuel.
Yeah, it's strange. It made sense why getting more parts for the dolphin allows you to access more areas, right? It
Mhm,
makes sense why fruit, you obviously get it for juice, which you survive,
mhm.
But this is just completely arbitrary.
Yes.
It's weird that it's in a mainline Pikmin game.
It exists to facilitate the gameplay, but it doesn't make sense on its own.
Yes. It's one of those things where it could make sense and facilitate the gameplay at the same time. You know what I mean?
Right. But then you don't have the treasures, right? Like the Game Boy, which no one will be able to afford, you know? Like a $200 Game Boy just sitting there. Anyway, so another thing that also really bothered me on the topic of consistency is that, so apparently the rescue squad that you're part of is from a planet called like Gia, I believe, something like that.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
They're all susceptible, or they cannot breathe oxygen, of course.
Right.
Like all the other captains. However, Ochi is also from Gia, and he can breathe the oxygen just fine. So
True.
does he not need oxygen or something? That kind of thing wouldn't have happened in the other games.
Yes, exactly.
Also, you can tell that the characters don't have the same level of care that they had in the previous 3 games.
Mhm.
Because they all look like they were generated using that character creator that's part of the game.
Yes. And I don't think you can actually create them in the editor. I think they have some extra options that they use to make
Right.
them, but
Developer
still
mode.
very obvious that it's like that. So
Yes. So what all this is getting at kind of is that new Pikmin is not the same as it used to be. Not the same as old Pikmin. Somehow there's been a split in game design paradigm, and what's happened is Nintendo went and created 2 completely different fan bases. So you have the Pikmin veterans who like the old style of Pikmin, and now you have the new Pikmin fans who like the cute mascot Pikmin, Pikmin
yeah.
as these characters, I don't know what you call them.
Yeah, they're cute and friendly and lovable.
Yes.
It's not like they all are brutally eaten and it's fight or die on the planet.
They're like Smurfs.
That's true. Okay.
Except, yeah, I mean, I don't know about the Smurf lore, but do Smurfs die? Because Pikmin sure die all the time, and that's like a core part of the game, and they're kind of downplaying that quite a bit, I think.
Yes, exactly. Well, I guess in Pikmin 4, Pikmin really don't die in the new game. So, my most recent playthrough in the demo, I'm pretty sure I had 0 deaths, and I wasn't even trying to. So,
I had a few deaths when I was trying to get that pig enemy to do a specific thing.
oh yeah, I see.
I was trying to get him to do his charge,
Right.
where he knocks the Pikmin off to the sides, rather than knocking them forward like the blowhogs.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mean to get too like in the weeds on this, but that just kind of shows what their focus is, right? It used to be enemies would shake you off in a place where they could eat you, right? Where it's most advantageous for them. But now they just shake them off to where you literally cannot be killed by them. I mean, unless you're, actively trying.
Unless you're bad like me. These 2 communities being separate like this, or these 2 game design paradigms, it's not a new thing. It's been happening for a long time, and part of our discussion today, I wanted to go back in time and pinpoint exactly where this moment happened, and how did we get to the Pikmin 4 that we have now, which is, you don't have the same level of control that you did. The new Pikmin 4 is a fundamentally different game than the old Pikmin. So, It goes all the way back to the third Pikmin release, which is the new play control port of Pikmin 1 on the Wii. This added a few things like pointer controls, all that good stuff, but it also added a few band-aids onto the game design. You can now time travel, so you can go back in time to previous days and not worry about your mistakes as much as you had to in Pikmin 1, the original version. And also they changed bomb rocks. They made them a lot safer. The Pikmin do all the work now, so you're not as much at risk of exploding your entire team.
Yes, yeah.
It's kind of just a rite of passage for Pikmin players. You're going to survive blowing up your team on a few occasions.
Hey, and Olimar will even mention that specifically if it happens. It's like, the developers planned for this to be a possibility. It's part of the game.
But no longer do they want you to feel the sting of failure that comes from mishandling bomb rocks. They take the control away from the player to make that mistake. Then that's how we get the new bomb rocks, and of course that continued on to Pikmin 3, where Pikmin, and I think you'll agree with me on this one, Pikmin 3 is great in a lot of ways, but it's really the game where Pikmin became robots.
True.
So now they do basically exactly what you say whenever you say it. In Pikmin 1, they would get distracted with nectar grass and things like that, and they would actually leave your party, or they would trip, and you'd have to go back for them.
Yes.
They have all these quirks to them, but in Pikmin 3, they really ironed out a lot of those, and so now Pikmin are very precise, and they follow behind you in this really nice, straight single-file line. It really makes them feel a lot less organic. Feel like machines that execute what you want to do, which is great for challenge mode, but I also think you do lose something. And so I don't think Pikmin 3 really caused much damage in this regard. I think it's fine. But you can start to see where this whole idea emerges. Like, we don't want players to be able to... We don't want to give them the opportunity to make a mistake and kill one of their Pikmin.
Yeah. And I understand why they would want to make the Pikmin more easy to manipulate, less frustrating. But honestly, in the first game, those things were not really that frustrating because, like the nectar grass, for example, that's something right? It only happens if you forget and your Pikmin get distracted by because you walk through it, right? But it makes it more complex in the sense that your Pikmin will get distracted if you let them, so you need to make sure that doesn't happen. Even in the new play control version, they sort of removed Pikmin getting distracted by pellet posies and the nectar grass and everything like that. So you can see it there too.
That's right. After Pikmin 3, we get into what I like to call the dark age of Pikmin. It's because we didn't get any games whatsoever. Okay, well that's not true, because we got Hey Pikmin. But
that doesn't count.
Where the paradigm shift really happened is right here when the Pikmin short films came out, because those sort of changed the perspective that we look at Pikmin. They have personality, they're cute and friendly. Not to say that they didn't have those things in the other games, but now that's the focus rather than surviving in this alien world and trying to overcome the food chain in this ecosystem that you're in.
Right.
And it's about, exploring. It's about being small and walking around in like someone's backyard. It's really not about exploring an alien world. I think that's what I'm getting at here.
Okay.
The focus has changed a lot. Just with these short films, there's like 3 of them or something. You go watch them, you'll see what I mean. They really aren't quite congruent with the way that Pikmin 1, 2, and 3 present the world. And the same can be said for Pikmin Bloom, which is the mobile app. You can name your Pikmin.
I think you can grow your relationship with each individual Pikmin. And there's no combat, you can't your Pikmin can't die ever. It's all about your relationship with these cute little creatures. So that really shows what you're talking about too, I think.
And it's a slippery slope too, because how long until we get to the Pikmin dating sim? I am not looking forward to that. You can kind of see how the Pikmin series transformed throughout this period, even though we didn't really get any games. Any numbered Pikmin games, of course.
Right.
But suddenly, the Pikmin Renaissance happened, and that was the release of 3 Deluxe, and then later, which I think it was like a 2-year gap between, so it was quite a bit later. Pikmin 1 and 2, of course, came to the Switch, and now 4 is on the way.
Yes.
So this has really opened up, I think, Nintendo's eyes that there is demand for Pikmin.
Right. Now, when you say demand for Pikmin, do you mean the demand for the old Pikmin, the hostile, high complexity, high skill kind of Pikmin? Or is it more of the new, cutesy, cuddly, perfect kind of little Pikmin experience you
Hmm.
get?
I don't know because I kind of feel like we've had a lot of. I feel like the Pikmin speedrunning scenes have grown a lot.
That is true. Yeah.
I also think that, they did add things like ultra spicy mode and stuff like that to make it. And I mean, they brought back the original games, so.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, even though they added an ultra spicy mode, they also added an easier mode to the
Mm,
game. And Pikmin 3 was already quite easy.
hmm
And I'll have to double check this, but I'm pretty sure that the mission modes are also bumped down to the easier difficulty in terms of like enemy health and things. So I think we can still sort of see that kind of design philosophy.
So they might be aware to some degree that there is this gold mine of gameplay depth that they have struck, but I don't think it's Nintendo's really in a hurry to make use of that. I think it's more the fact that having these games on Switch means that it can generate more new Pikmin fans.
Right, right,
Because really, it's not a good time to be a Pikmin fan already. It's a good time to not be a Pikmin fan yet.
right. And then become a Pikmin fan.
Exactly. If you're not a Pikmin fan yet, you get to experience all these great games and potentially play them in reverse order where the difficulty will scale properly.
Now, the thing that frustrates me is that we are Pikmin veterans, right? So Pikmin 4's existence currently, it really just communicates to me that there's nothing for us left, All that they're going to be making is this, the cute and cuddly, impossible to mess up version of Pikmin rather than this intricate and uniquely challenging kind of games they made that we fell in love with, right?
Yes. Yeah, Pikmin is very unique as a game, and there's really nowhere else to get that kind of gameplay that's not Pikmin. I don't foresee a future where Nintendo really comes back and makes a Pikmin game that's like the originals.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
for right now, we're stuck with games like Hotel Transylvania 3, right, on the Switch. Or
Yeah.
like that's a Pikmin like. That's about as Pikmin like as you're gonna get. But I hope that the indie scene can pick up
Yeah.
torch
Yeah,
here.
maybe. There are a lot of like Pikmin 2 and 3 mods that people have made.
Yeah,
A lot of new caves and stuff, for example, or new
that's
mission
good.
modes
And
that
the
they've
hard
added.
mode packs and everything.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say that the old Pikmin community, in a sense, is niche, and
Yes.
that it's not quite in Nintendo's best interest to make that a priority. So we really don't have enough buying power to
Right.
influence their decision making in regards to that.
Right. Right.
So we're kind of just stuck with Pikmin 4. And I'm sure people are going to run it anyway. I think, I'm predicting it's going to be the longest speedrun and
Yeah.
also the easiest to get into.
I mean, like the speed run of the demo already is like 50 something minutes long, which is about as long as the full game of Pikmin 1, right? I
Right.
mean, yeah,
So, and I'm sure they'll optimize it a little bit more, but
yeah. Oh, yeah. This kind of thing I think we can kind of see in other game franchises too, which is what makes me feel like it needs to be said even more, right?
hmm
We can see this kind of thing happening in Pokemon and Zelda, even I would say.
yes,
And I'm sure there's others
Metroid.
that I can't think of. Yeah, Metroid. These are all situations where the old fan base is not being catered to because they know that they're so starved for content that they'll be buying the new game regardless. But they've sort of cultivated this new audience, this much broader audience, right? This much more accessible audience
hmm
that they'll actually be making a lot more money with. And even though they don't cater to the veterans, right? A lot of, diehard Pokemon fans who have been playing the series for 20 years or whatever, right? Will still be buying each and every new Pokemon game because, well, of course they are. It's Pokemon, right?
It's like a disease or something.
Yeah. But that's what worries me so much. And that's why I'm sad to see Pikmin end up like this too, because as the person who is being affected negatively like this, who is losing what their old games used to be like,
hmm
it's just not a bright future for people like us.
It's not fun watching the series shift like this, but it
Yes.
does
Yes.
happen. I mean, every time you add another entry to a series, it's going to change somehow. Alright, so that's pretty much all that we're slated to cover here. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we call it quits?
Um, Well, I think that's pretty much everything. Yeah. There you go.
One more thing I actually want to mention, because it does bother me a lot. As a fan of swarming in the old Pikmin games,
Right.
in the Switch versions, you have to hold L, because
Oh, yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
said this earlier, but the Switch versions are actually just the Wii ports of the games,
Mhm.
ported to Switch. They have Wii controls, so you have to hold L and move the right stick to do it. So it's
Right,
kind of like
right.
creating this soft barrier so that people won't use it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
This whole thing,
I saw a short on YouTube the other day saying that the title was like, "Don't miss this secret Pikmin 1 and 2 mechanic," or whatever, you know. And I mean, the secret quote unquote mechanic was just swarming. You know, the C stick.
yeah,
You're definitely right about there being this sort of small barrier. It sort of presents it as being less needed or useful. You know,
yeah,
despite how much of a big part of the game it is. You know.
yeah. I have this inclination to think about it as like Miyamoto pulling Lucas and going back and retconning his entire body of work.
Hmm.
And I don't
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
necessarily directors. Well, I can't, tell Miyamoto how to think, but it's definitely changing Pikmin in a way that I'm not looking forward to. So,
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. And there are a lot of people who will enjoy this new Pikmin thing, because they're not, old Pikmin fans, right?
yeah.
They're just now getting into it, or they haven't gotten into it yet, right? And
Yeah.
they'll think, wow, Pikmin's great, They just don't know what it used to
Well, that's good. At least someone will enjoy it.
be. Yeah,
Well, I mean, at least they did put Pikmin 1 and 2 on Switch, so more people can play it without,
that is true. Yeah.
Alright, well, that's all we have for today.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.
You don't have enough memory in the memory card.